telling her my allergies are acting up, so if I'm scratchy or cough, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
That's what it is.
Yeah. Okay, so first off, what led you to decide to run kind of in tandem with Randy Campbell?
Well, I had been thinking about it for a couple of years and got involved when they started banning books. And so I started speaking out at that point and just got progressively more involved and then had decided I was going to run. And then Randy and I met last summer and found out we had a lot in common and what we wanted for the district. And so then we decided to work together. So that's how we are. That's how we got here.
Yeah, that's great. Oh, that's awesome. So as it pertains to then, what am I talking about? Single member voting districts. What's kind of your take on that?
I think it makes a lot of sense. We've seen the lack of representation and what that's done in Keller ISD, and I think it's a good idea. I have questions about how it'll be divided up and how it would all work, and particularly who gets to do the dividing and how that all is set up. But I do think that having better representation across the district would serve all of our students.
I see. Do you have any question right here? Okay. So, firstly and chiefly, could I get your stance? I mean, you've made this like pretty blatantly apparent, but just to have it on this, what's your stance on school vouchers?
I am against school vouchers, entirely and completely against school vouchers. Our public schools need all the funding they can get right now. It's been halted or stalled out since 2019, and we need to fund public schools fully before we start talking about other things.
I see. And you said earlier that book bannings are kind of what like got you into this. So I'm also going to move the phone a bit closer because it's like kind of loud in here. You said book bannings kind of got you into this. So what's your stance on that? Like, have you seen the rubric that?
I have seen the rubric. So the books is a complicated issue. That's why I'm pausing a bit. So I believe that every parent has the right to determine what their child should read. Where I have a problem with it is when other parents are infringing upon my rights as a parent to limit what books are available for other students. So there already were processes in place where individuals could say, don't let my kid take this book out or this type of book, and they decided to take it further and start removing books and targeting certain groups as they did that, which I don't believe in. I feel like you should be able to find yourself in the libraries and read whatever is appropriate for your grade level. So.
I'd like to add on to that. While we're on the topic of banning literature, do you have any thoughts on the new processes that have been created for things such as like play approval, where it's other like performed works? What's your stance on that?
Those have been quite an interesting process as well this year. They just have slowed the whole thing down. I don't know that there has been any discussion of why it was put in place and what the benefits have been. It doesn't seem like it's done any good. It's just slowed everything down and messed up the students' schedules. So I would like to see that we reevaluate and go back to probably something prior to that and see if there's more views that are needed, then okay, but like there needs to be some justification for it, not just a random, we're changing it. And it also seemed like it was people who were not involved with fine arts making decisions, whereas we have plenty of experts in KISD. We should trust them to do their work.
On that, do you have kind of any statement about whatever the hell happened with the Laramie project? Was that last year or the year before last year?
It was last year.
Last year, yeah.
Yeah. And that seemed to be like several things that have happened over the last several years, kind of a knee-jerk reaction where someone wanted it pulled and the long-term consequences weren't really thought of and people weren't consulted. I think that our board has gotten very insular in who they're talking to and who they're representing, and having different voices on that board and taking into account different voices from the community would help prevent those kinds of situations where it would be a little broader perspective versus just, I think this, okay, let's do that.
Okay.
If you were to be elected, do you have any specific ideas of how you would implement more community input?
there's definitely the opportunity for more committees. They've streamlined the committees a fair amount, and we've seen that the membership is not very representative. So finding a way to get it more truly representative, I also think there's opportunity for more student involvement. There's different things I'm sure on the campuses. I haven't had a chance to really learn kind of how much on the high school level. I know that there's a student council at my daughter's intermediate school, but she's too young for it. So
the student councils at all the schools are pretty much vestigial.
Are they? Okay.
They have, I believe when they were founded, they had some measure of independent power, but now they've been pretty much scraped hollow.
Oh, no, okay.
Where, you can say like, this thing, and that's
it. Okay. Well, I know they had talked about trying to get some students to go to Austin to advocate. I don't know if that ever happened because that was the Tracy Johnson thing, and my guess is it did not happen. But I do think that having some sort of student advisory groups to get some opinions would be a good thing.
So I don't know if you've heard of these guys. We're called the Keller Student Activism Okay.
Imagine that. Yeah.
So, this has been hard to get statements on from board candidates. So, and I understand if necessarily don't want to say anything, but since the, dead name policy, if you will, is at the district level, do you have any plans to do anything about that if you get elected?
Keller ISD has so many issues right now. I have my personal opinions on that, but I don't want to tell you just my personal opinions because it's kind of one of those, it's also what I would do once I get in. I feel like we need to right the ship on the big financial front first, and then start looking at all the side things they have thrown in to muddy the waters.
I see.
And so I would not see it as like a early on thing. Mm-hmm. My personal opinion is different.
Yeah.
But I don't believe that the school board should be political. So all the side issues that they've done over the last several years are not things I would have supported. Whether I had agreed with them or not, it just to me wasn't things that they needed to be pushing. They needed to be focusing on the finances. They needed to be improving the education quality. They needed to be keeping our teachers and supporting our teachers versus going into all these side issues that have just caused division.
So speaking of financial issues, on the Alliance ISD Q&A, you voiced your support for a bond. Mm-hmm. Walk me through what implementing that would be like, what the effect would be on the people that live inside of KISD's borders.
Yeah, and it's funny. It sounds like I'm saying the same thing over and over, but a lot of our issues are such a balancing act because right now taxpayers are hurting. Inflation's high, everyone's stretched thin, so passing a bond is going to be tough, but at the same time we've got 20-year-old facilities that are going to need fixing, or our students aren't going to be able to be there safely, and it's just going to get more expensive. So I would look at what opportunities there are. If there's ways to do the short-term ones to try to free up some money, if there's the chance to do a longer term, there's a whole process for that where you have committees and groups that go out and advocate and try to drum up support. And so I think that we just need to look at all avenues. I also think we need to look at private options. Are there foundations that we could talk to that could help do some extra support for teachers or something like that, where we could help bring in some other dollars to help free up some of our maintenance fees.
On foundations, have you heard of Mr. Campbell's plan to do that private-public corporate fund?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is Guadalupe Regional Medical Center plan. Yeah.
Yes.
Would you consider maybe implementing something like that?
Yeah, potentially. I think anything should be looked at this point. We are in such dire financial situation, and it's only going to get worse as these buildings get older, that we're going to have to look at it all and truly look at it all, not just get fixated on one thing and try to drive that through, but really look at the board and see what's available. The Keller Foundation had said that they weren't going to have their thing. They're having a spring break activity this week where different things can be bought to support the Keller ISD Foundation. So I think that's another opportunity. Can we get more support for that now that we know that we're not splitting, at least at this point? Can that foundation be another avenue where we really drive the community interest now that we know it's out there and help support that? So, yeah.
Got it. Okay. So, sorry, I usually write down my questions, but for whatever reason this time I didn't.
Is it good?
So, hold on, I'm trying to figure out what I asked everyone else because I had them all standardized, but I forgot what they were. PAC funding. Mm-hmm. Where where do we lie on that? I know that the only one registered right now is the Keller ISD United. But even then, where do you lie on political action committees funding? Like, what's your when is it okay? When's it not okay? If it's okay or not okay at all, what's your kind of 2 cents on that?
There's all different kinds. So the dark money PAC's completely not okay. Patriot Mobile is the ones that you don't know where it's coming from, completely not okay. There are other ones that are, you know, I don't know the names of them, so I'm not going to make up one. There are local PACs that are just local individuals, that it's different. So I think for those that are more locally established, it's probably fine. But the ones that are the dark money PACs are the ones that we really have to be concerned about. Those are the ones that did the mailers and injected all the politics in.
I see.
Yeah.
Would you take any action to try and depoliticize some of the issues of the school board? Because you've talked about that a lot in this interview. So what is your kind of plan to do that if you have one?
My plan is basically come in with a binder full of here are the rules of order and things that you need to know so that I can flip through and go. You know, it's kind of one of those, I feel like there's going to be some defensive maneuvering and trying to work with the current board and all the things that they're doing, and then trying to get the focus on what we need, and that's teacher support and student success. And anything else really, I think, needs to be on the sidelines for now until we get the other two stored up.
Got it.
I'm really concerned about teachers and the contract renewals coming up. That I think now that they said there's no split, that will help, but it still feels like an awful lot of uncertainty for teachers.
I see.
Are there any specific actions that you would like to see taken or that you would like to implement to specifically help support our teachers right now?
I'd like to see if there's any way to do on the private front some sort of foundation work, like I mentioned, with trying to help them with supporting their classrooms. I feel like the needs I've seen of the teachers in recent years on their wish lists on Amazon are just going up and up and up. And I feel like, I don't know if it's exactly tied to less support, but I do think that, you know, they need some more support there. So that would be one thing.
I will say on that, I've noticed that my wish lists have gone from like fun balls in the classroom to like pencils.
Yes.
Please, I need paper.
Yes. I've gotten a lot of those. One teacher, I sent a box of Kleenex last week, and she sent another email this weekend and said one parent sent in a box of Kleenex, but I still need Kleenex. So I'm like, I'll send in another box next week. But, you know, like, Kleenex, we should be able to find Kleenex in our schools during cold and flu season. Like, you know, could we not have some way to get some of this back in? Group purchasing, whatever. I don't know what the options are, but I think it's time to explore some of that creative ways to look. And then just trying to eliminate a vindictive culture. I feel like a lot of people have been kind of out looking for gotcha moments with teachers in the last few years. And to me, they are professionals who deserve our respect and deserve to work with them. And let's give people the benefit of the doubt. Like, I don't think anyone gets into teaching with nefarious thoughts. Like, they generally want to help kids and do wonderful things.
No one's trying to indoctrinate anyone.
Right. Yeah. And they don't have time. They don't have the resources. You know, it's very tight. They're dealing with more students, less planning periods. That's one thing I think needs to be looked at. What was the impact of taking away all those planning periods? And how has that impacted the students? How has it impacted the teachers? What's going on with scores? Is it impacting it? I don't know that they've looked at it. You know, when you do these kinds of cuts, you have to look more broad term than just the immediate. So, like, yes, we got the cost savings because we cut, you know, X number of positions, but like, then does that mean that the scores went down like 10 points? Okay, then we got to account for that. Like, so taking a more broad range look of it is what I'd like to do. So not just okay, we got to get to the number every June. Yes, we have to get to a budget number. That's important. But how do we get there and how do we plan ahead? So, like, with these plants that are so old, you can't wait till they all break at the same time. You got to figure out a scheduled maintenance to do it, and money is tight, so you really have to figure it out at that point. So really just taking a longer range look. Okay.
So what separates you specifically from the incumbent, Ms. Smith? What's your kind of, like, if you were to give me like a 2 or 3 sentence thing, what's your, like, here's why you should vote for me and not Jonah?
I will be focused on the financial and accountability side and not the political side, and the cultural issues that I've been focused on in the last few years.
Got it. And What about, I believe Jade Holbrook is place 2. What's your kind of stance on that? Or on her, sorry.
I don't know much about her. Like everyone else, I haven't seen very much. So, I know that in one interview she talked about being very conservative. I don't know what that means in terms of policy. There was a video from a Tarrant Republicans meeting that she spoke briefly at.
Okay. I'll need to go check that out. I haven't been able to. I've been trying to. Zara and I've been working on kind of like posters for each of the candidates, and finding information on Jade Holbrook has proven exceptionally difficult. As you've seen, as I'm sure you've seen on my editing stuff, everything starts with, based on this one quote from her website, I'm going to guess that this is how she feels.
Yeah, I've not met her. We had a day where we pulled the names for the candidates for the order on the ballot, but it was kind of one of those not everyone was able to come things. So I have not met her yet.
I see. And now that the other Jennifer has pulled out, which, by the way, Jennifer Rancliffe, Jennifer Ramsey, Jennifer Air, there's too many Jennifers involved in all of this.
There's a reason I use Erickson for KISD. Yes.
No offense to you.
All Jennifers are used to that.
There's too many of them.
I was Jenny G and everything else growing up. Like, I'm used to multiple Jennifers.
Jennifer Middleton taught me in first grade. Like, there's too many of you. But with Miss Ramsey dropping out of place 3, if you were to, from your stance, which of the place 3 trustees, with the information that you know right now, would you hope to see elected?
Honestly, I haven't really looked into it at this point. I've been so focused on my own candidacy that I will look at it before I go and vote. But right now, I'm focused on meeting the voters and getting out and securing place 2. That's the important thing.
I see. Okay. That is... If you have anything else, will I try to think of new questions? Because that is all I've got so far.
And I have a 5th grader. It's come up a lot in going around. Whether I have a kid in the district, I do. She's in 5th grade.
5th grade. Okay.
So she'll be around for a while.
Yes. Who is your treasurer for your campaign?
I am.
That.
Basically, in campaigns, what I've learned is the candidate is the one that is ultimately responsible, even if you have a treasurer. So it just seemed easy enough to do it myself for this level of campaign. Okay,
I see. Because I was looking on the form thing, and I was like, man, I can't find. So it is just you. Okay, I thought I was
because
going crazy.
You basically have to fill out like 2 or 3 rounds of forms, I think, maybe 4, but it's all the same thing, and I would have had to have done the work anyway. So I kept it simple.
Well, that's all I have. Do you have any questions for me or for Zara about?
I'm just curious kind of what you're hearing, what you're seeing, if there's anything in particular that you think a school board trustee could help with. I think that's the big question I'm getting a lot is what can you do? And there are limitations on what trustees can do. But
So a big problem that I'm seeing, especially whenever I was trying to organize the walkout, is a lot of students view what's going on in the school board as important as like the weather on Mars. So little of them have a vested interest in what's going on. Well, I guess not a vested interest because they frickin' go to the schools.
Yeah,
but
they do have a big interest. Yeah.
They don't seem to actually care at all.
Yeah.
In fact, none of them even knew who Charles Rancliffe was.
Yeah.
At all, which just drives me insane.
Yeah.
I've had to explain what PACs were, I think, like 5 times in the today alone to people. It's insane. So hosting a kind of I mean, it'll be kind of hard with the whole walking moratorium thing, but if somehow the board could have a meeting with just however many students show up to say, hey, what are you worried about X, Y, and Z? And then when you're implementing policies that directly affect the students, like the phone policy and the YouTube ban and all that stuff, not saying that you are like this, but be way less ham-fisted with it. Try and, one of my friends has, he's got a very strong autism diagnosis, and any noise that he doesn't make is incredibly hard for him to cope with. So he had noise canceling headphones pretty much everywhere he went, and now he can't do that.
Oh wow.
Which, I mean, obviously, you weren't on the board. You didn't pass that. You only did so much. But things like that where whenever we pass something big, we put a lot of nuance to it. We say, okay, we want this gone, but there are, special cases where obviously Bluetooth headphones are important, where YouTube access is important.
Yeah.
Because, the phones were a huge distraction in the classrooms, but there are some times where you need that.
Right. I think that's where it comes into having more voices. So if you had more people involved or consulted or asked different questions, you probably would have gotten to that point. Because I think, I know several kids who do that. They wear the headphones. My daughter's had sensitivity to noises after COVID for sure. So I get that too. I think if you have those different perspectives, you catch that stuff better than if you're an insular group of like 7 very similar people who hang out with similar people. And getting that broad variety, then you're going to ask different questions.
So you do talk about deselfification a lot of the board. My question to you is, let's say, Chelsea and Joni, or not Chelsea and Joni, Chelsea gets reelected and, I don't know, whichever the more conservative candidate of the place 1 trustees gets elected is, if you get on the board, I didn't say it, if you get on the board, how are you going to overcome essentially getting, what happened with the split where Chelsea and Joni were allegedly completely shut? How are you going to attempt to combat that? Because I think that might be the greatest fear among voters, isn't necessarily what you believe in, but the fact that if you get put on the board, you're going to have virtually no power. So what's your plan to overcome that?
Yeah. And that's where I want to have all the rules and everything at my fingertips so that I can know and ask questions and pause things when they're veering into different territories, or know when to push back, know when I can push back, when I can ask things. It's something that they did with giving more power to the president of the board and the policy changes last year. Like, is there a way to reverse that? Is there a way to bring it back? Like, looking at those avenues and ways to kind of shift some of the power back is what I would anticipate doing. Okay. So I realize that it will be a lonelier spot, at least for now, but I do feel it's important for our community to have a difference of opinion on the board.
Got it. And I feel like it's important to add, because just so you know, these full interviews are going to be, I'm working with the person behind the KSD Parents and Community account to make a supercut of this.
Okay.
And then I'm also trying to get someone who actually knows how Google works to set up a YouTube channel. Okay. And then we're going to upload the full, for the 4 people that want to watch the whole thing with no video, to do that. So I'm just going to say this, I feel like it's also important for people to realize that if they elect you, you're not just in there for 1 year, right?
Right, yeah, it's a 3-year term.
If they want to try to flip the balance of power on the board, they're going to have to get you in, and they're going to have to get, whoever else in, and whoever else in. So, that's what people are worried about, is allocation of the board.
Right, yeah, it's a 3-year term, and it rotates around. And the other thing a lot of people don't realize is it's a volunteer position. This is not a paid job. This is a side gig in addition to everything else in life that the board members do. So,
I see. Do you have, either of you guys have anything else we want to?
Just any final things you'd like to say?
Final remarks?
I'm just really passionate about the district. I got involved when my daughter was starting off in school and did a little bit of each year it gets more, and got more involved a couple years ago, and I just feel like this is the time. I have the ability to do this, and I'm trying and working on behalf of our teachers and students. It's something I'm really passionate about. So.
Oh, and on that, what qualifications do you have to be a board member? I know that you've been speaking at board meetings since the Stone Age. You've been incredibly involved in this.
That makes me sound really old.
Well, I mean, it was like 4 years ago?
It's a couple of years ago, yeah. So I started off my career as a reporter and then moved into communications work. And so I do a lot of strategy and planning around communications and information. So I know how to ask the tough questions. I know how to dig. I covered lots of public meetings as I was a young reporter moving around and doing things. That's how I started when I was at the University of Missouri. Doing public meetings with the curators, and so know the ins and outs of that, and that will help with the board and the issues.
Okay, I think that's all.
Okay.